There we go. Okay, so a couple of things, guys. First of all, welcome. We use this phrase bulletproofing your business. Really, that's a shout out to the idea of our business being a vehicle or a mechanism for the realization of our calling and that of our people. I think that is the highest purpose of business is to facilitate that. I think it's a spiritual calling. I think that it brings us into a level of influence and value creation that is more than serving the dollar. And if you've ever asked yourself the question, how can I be in business and still be a moral and spiritual person, then you're in the right podcast or webinar rather. Podcast too. If you haven't heard the podcast, check that out. But this is the right place for that because there is a way to do that that sets people free. And that's the fire that needs to get lit inside of everybody is that fire of I don't have to work to live. Trading time for money is a loser's game. And we need to look at how we beat this system at its own rules, getting ready for a new system. So we have to be amphibious. We got to be able to be in the water, but we've got to know that the red ocean of debt-driven consumption cannot continue long and will eventually fall apart. And we need to make sure that our businesses are able to exist not only in the current reality, but in the reality that is coming and to prepare for that. So part of that is looking at hiring in a different way. I would say every area of the business. If you haven't taken our flagship assessment, it's a great place to start. We measure all 12 areas of your business in four ways: strategic alignment, scalability, systemization, and performance. And so when you look at an area of a business and you say, hey, this is the old way of doing it, or this is the way that's been based on the rules we were given, is there a better way to do it? We have a lot of modules, system building guides, and coaching to help answer that question with an affirmative. There is a different way to do it. So for hiring, yeah, this is the phrase I hear most often. You can't get good people. Okay. Has anybody, you can throw a yes in the chat if you want to agree with that. Has anybody else said, yeah, you can't get good people? I just can't find good people. I want to grow my business, but there's just not good people out there. It's pretty common. And there's some good reasons for that. Oftentimes we can say, well, they are, the younger generation is maybe myopic. They're not necessarily motivated. But I want to tell you that that's not the case. I think in every generation we have people who are unmotivated, lazy, etc. But that's not the majority. But there is a huge difference that you have to understand between the generations if you're going to hire effectively. Huge generation. Okay. This issue is you can't overstate how big this generational divide is. And again, the short version is go and get the book called The Fourth Turning. That's a long book, but it's going to help you understand a cycle that we're in. But we have an exaggerated multiplier or accelerant in today's culture, which is the speed of the change of technology. Because of that, we have not only a divide normally, as you would with an older generation and a younger generation, but you have the added speed of that divide and depth of it so that it's not just, hey, the younger generation thinks there's a better way to plow, in our agrarian society, 500 years ago. And it's a slight difference, but it produces some friction, older generation, younger generation. We're talking about worlds of divide, not only in our use of language. How many of you remember when to Google something sounded weird? When someone said, "Oh, somebody friended me," that sounded weird. Someone's following me meant that you actually had a stalker, right? The language has changed so quickly, and that has produced such a divide that we don't think in ways that are as similar as they need to be able to reach out and get people on our team that are going to help us go where we need to go. And so to bridge that divide, the first thing we have to understand is you have to speak two languages. Okay. In one version of this, it is here's a customer service job. I'm hiring people for it. Here's the job description. People should apply. And then you would take your time one on one to interview each of those people talk about their goals, talk about what they want to do, maybe call some of their references, and then you'd make a hiring decision. You'd have 10 or 15 people to choose from. Today, you put an ad on Indeed or ZipRecruiter, and you get 500 people who click the link and nobody shows up for the next step. And the reason is because there's a very different approach. Remember that the approach for the younger generation is about volume and it is about feedback. And so, whether they're just playing the game with unemployment and able to say, see, I applied for a job, that's why I clicked the link, and to continue to get paid to stay home, or they're just, again, in this different way of thinking, we have to countermand that. And the way that we do that is by asking a very important question and stating our intentions clearly up front. We're hiring smart, hardworking, self-managing people. So I want everybody to write that down. Okay, wherever you're going to advertise for a job, wherever you might be reaching out to people who would join your team, that's the phrase that you want to use. We're hiring smart, hardworking, self-managing people. Does that describe you? Okay, now you'd probably be like, well, that's obvious. Of course, that's who we want. But that's exactly the problem. It's not obvious. It's not obvious to them. You need to be leading them before they're on your team. And you're leading them with a powerful question. Okay. Who who do men say that I am? That was a very powerful question that Jesus asked. Okay. Powerful questions drive action. Wanting things to be like they were in the 1980s gets nothing done. I wish it was like it was in the old days. Well, it's not. And it's not only not like it was in the old days, it's totally different. That generation is waiting on the game to load. The digitals, the millennials, whatever you want to call them, they've grown up with so much hyperstructure in their life that when they're coming to your HVAC company or your IT company or your drywall company or your real estate company, and they don't have 4K surround sound, multiple layers, multiple stories, multiple soundtracks, all of the structure that's been put into the entertainment that these kids have grown up on, when that doesn't exist, they don't know what to do. They literally are uncertain of what to do. And it doesn't mean they're lazy and it doesn't mean they're myopic. It means they're waiting on the game to load. This is a generational curse. Okay, if the generations are divided against each other, then whatever country or locality that is happening in, that society is going to fall apart. And part of our opportunity as business owners is to bridge the generational gap. And we do that by asking a powerful question. Hey, we're going to hire smart, hardworking, self-managing people. Is that you? The next thing that we have to do is tell a compelling story about why we're in business. If you say our HVAC company has been around for 23 years and we want to be number one in customer service and satisfaction in the greater Atlanta area, oh, that sounds good. If you were born before 1975, but again, you're speaking the wrong language. People need to be aware of a compelling story that involves them doing something meaningful. And if you say, well, customer service is meaningful, you're again missing the point. They don't know that. That sentence doesn't translate that way to them. Look at this. In the 1980s, all the superheroes were individuals. Who remembers Christopher Reeves? Yep. Who remembered, right? Come on. It's an individual who's the hero. Patton. Think of the hero, even Braveheart, right? Think of the movies that celebrate the individual. If we go back another generation, John Wayne, okay, the Lone Ranger. Lone, they're alone, the Lone Ranger. What is the ethos in that generation? That you pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you do it on your own. Okay. Since 1990, the movies have shifted significantly. We have very few movies about an individual hero. What do we have? We have movies about teams, the Avengers, Marvel Comics. Look at all of the iterations where the hero is a team. And while some of you may be like, oh my gosh, don't, don't make me sick to my stomach, right? I understand that feeling, but the reality is that this group of people from which we're going to be hiring thinks much more in terms of collaborative team effort than they do in terms of individual effort. And if you don't speak that language to them, They're just going to bounce off of your ad on Indeed or ZipRecruiter or wherever you're advertising, and you're not going to get any traction. So we have to tell them about how this team succeeds. We're serving Mrs. Jones. We're not just selling her a two by four. We're selling her part of the deck that she's going to celebrate her 80th birthday on. Now, again, I can feel some of you like, really? Do I have to do that? Well, the reality is that that is what's in your heart. If you love your business and you see it as part of your larger calling, then you do care about Mrs. Jones like that. You do. You don't just think, well, I can buy a two by four wholesale for 89 cents and I can sell it, a foot and I can sell it for $1.10. Okay. You are thinking and you care about that deck that Mrs. Jones is going to be having that birthday party on many years into the future. Now, that is what we have to transfer. Where there's no vision, people cast off restraint. Where there's no vision, people perish. That is true, and that is happening. So you've got to give a vision to this person that you're hiring of how they can be a hero on your team, with your team, in the service of something more than money. So if you put your job description up there and $15 an hour or $25 an hour or whatever you're advertising for, and you're like, gosh, I'm not getting any respondents, that should tell you something. It's not that they're not there. It's that we have to fish with a very different bait. The last thing that I'll say for this, and then again, throw some questions in the chat while we still got a few minutes, is that when you go to interview people, I think that it is a tragic mistake to do one-on-one interviews. You're wasting your time and you're probably wasting their time. And you're communicating that you need them more than they need you. As soon as you do that, you've lost the most important leadership principle, which is called leadership by pulling. Imagine that you have a rope coiled up on the ground, and you as a leader need to get that rope somewhere. Does it make sense to grab the end of the rope and push the rope? And to try to push the rope as though it were a straight rod and you are pushing it down the street. Can you imagine a steel rod and you're pushing it down the street, right? Okay, that's never going to work with a rope. So if you're going to lead, you have to lead by pulling, which means you need to grab the end of the rope and start walking. And then what will the rope do? It will uncoil, hopefully with no knots, and it will follow you. Okay. We have got to lead our people before we hire them. And we're leading them by saying, this is where we're going. This is where I'm going. And if you're interested in joining me, great, here we go. As opposed to, would you please consider one day, maybe soon, showing up on time and perhaps I could interview you and maybe you would choose my company. Being in that position might be nicer than Jesus and very, fun and good for like Sunday school thinking. But for world changers, we need to be leading and going somewhere. We don't need to be asking permission to be leading. We need to be consumed by our vision, passionate about where we're going, share that vision and how people can be a part of it and go there. When we do one-on-one interviews, we are breaking down that cycle and that way of thinking. So what I recommend is doing what we call a hiring seminar. And a hiring seminar is where people come to an audition. Instead of it one-on-one, it's five, six, seven people who are all at your office or a conference room or somewhere who are going to go through some very strategic steps to let you see not only can they get there on time and show up, but how do they respond to competition? You see, you're never going to know what someone can do in a job by talking to them. You're never going to know that. You need to see them do something. And in this way that we teach this hiring seminar in our coaching program, we set up a scenario where you get to see them in action. Not only that, you get to see how they function with people they're competing with. Not only that, you get to see how well they're able to complement people that they're competing with. There's layers of character that are revealed, quality of their calling that's revealed, and yes, competency. So we have to hire for all three of those. But as you can see, it takes a very different tact. If you keep doing it the old way, you will keep getting the same results you're getting. And you will then, as we describe in our module, Hidden Decision Drivers, you will then start to get exhausted. Then you will start to get frustrated. Then you will start to create a blame story. And you're either going to blame yourself or you're going to blame everyone else. Either way, you don't move forward. This is about shifting paradigms. And bulletproofing your business, the session that we do each week for 15 minutes, is about breaking you out of any old thought, any hidden decision-making pattern that is keeping you stuck. If it's hiring, hopefully this has been a good start to get you guys going. So, anybody else in the chat got a question? We're at time, so we're gonna blaze. If not, okay, I don't see anything in there, guys. I hope this has been helpful. If you have more questions about it, reach out to us at Founders Fire. Visit the website, foundersfire.com. Appreciate you guys. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Eric. Bye bye.